This feast of the Epiphany is rich with symbols: a light, star, a journey, foreigners on the road, a threatened king, a child, gifts being laid down, and a decision not to go home the same way. Epiphany is about seeing something we cannot ignore once it has been revealed. When the Magi arrived in Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the newborn king of the Jews?" Herod is troubled, we hear. And Matthew's gospel tells us that all Jerusalem is troubled with him. The light doesn't make everyone feel safe or at ease. It exposes fear, power, and insecurity. Epiphany shows us that truth does not always arrive gently. Sometimes it shakes what we thought we had figured out. The land where Jesus was born is once again marked by suffering. And even here in the USA, far from Bethlehem, that pain reaches into our lives through headlines, protests, arguments, silence, and strong reactions we may not fully understand in ourselves. Many of us arrive today aware of how quickly the world can stir something unsettled in us. And that is why this feast has affected me in a particular way this year. Recently, in December, I participated in an interfaith dialogue held at Catholic Theological Union in Chicago. There were Jewish leaders and Catholic leaders, young professionals. It was intense, but you could feel that it was important and that it mattered. What stayed with me most was hearing Jewish participants speak about how targeted they feel. They spoke about the effects of the synagogue shootings and the need to have security at public events, and carrying that same sense, the sense that when one person of the Jewish community is attacked, it feels personal. In the same room, there was a Palestinian American Catholic participant whose family is from Ramallah in Palestine, and they live there still. He spoke about carrying his family's story while sitting in dialogue with someone who supports the actions of the Israel Defense Force. He was trying in real time to hold emotions, grief, memory, and charity together toward the person in front of him, or rather, what the person in front of him represented. Watching this, participating in this dialogue, I felt pulled in many directions: curiosity, sadness, confusion. There were moments of silence, not because I had nothing to say, but because I realized how quickly I assume I understand what I do not. I didn't leave that experience with answers, but I also realized this: I could not walk away unchanged. Something in me had shifted, but not everything, but enough that I knew I could not simply react the same way as before. I felt with a deeper awareness that people are not headlines that we consume. They're not slogans, they're not positions on a screen. They're human beings with fear, memory, prayer, humor, warmth, and dignity. Isaiah tells us that the nations shall walk by God's light, not be conquered by it, not be silenced by it, but walk by it. And that light doesn't flatter us, it reveals us. That is the Epiphany. The Magi do not arrive with certainty. They arrive with a question. They don't control the story, but they're drawn into it. And when they finally encounter the child, vulnerable, unprotected, held by his mother, they lay down their gifts. They offer what they carried on the journey, not just objects, but time, risk, effort, exposure, what the journey had cost them. And then the gospel tells us something crucial. They departed for their country by another way. The Magi cannot return to Herod. They cannot pretend that they have not seen what they had seen. Epiphany doesn't simply reveal Christ, it changes the route. And now the feast then turns toward us. Why do certain headlines provoke such reactions in us? Why does complexity make us feel so uncomfortable? What do we lose if the story becomes more complicated than we want it to be? Because once we have truly encountered someone, we can't keep reacting in the same way. And the church speaks of peace, but not all peace is the same. A negative peace avoids discomfort. It tells us not to talk about hard things, not to ask questions, not to risk misunderstanding, as long as things stay calm. Positive peace is different. It doesn't avoid what's hard. It stays present, it listens longer, and it refuses to give up on the dignity of the person in front of us. Positive peace isn't comfortable. It asks us to stay engaged, even when it would be easier to run away or to turn away. It asks us to refuse language that turns people into problems, to question the assumptions we make too quickly, to notice the anger we hold on to because it excuses us from listening, and to be honest about how often we judge situations and people we have never actually encountered face to face. Once we have encountered someone, we cannot keep reacting in the same way. In a few moments, this altar will be prepared. Bread and wine will be brought forward, gifts that began as wheat and grapes, taken from the earth and changed by human hands, offered then back up to God. But on the Epiphany, the church brings more than just bread and wine. We bring what the journey has changed in us. For someone that may be offering clarity, for others it may be humility, and for some it may be simply the honesty to admit that we're still wrestling, still learning, still unsure. Even honest silence can be an offering if it keeps us present rather than turning away. Like the Magi, we lay something down. We lay down our tendency to assume we already understand. We lay down the explanations that let us stop thinking too soon. We lay down the judgments we form not too quickly. And we lay down the anger we have carried without realizing how tightly we're holding on to it. And in the end, we lay down the need to remain unchanged, because our encounter with Christ does not leave us where it found us. And if the Epiphany reveals anything at all, is that once we have seen the light, once we have encountered Christ, not as an idea, but revealed in fragile lives and real people, we cannot go back the same way. Christ, the Prince of Peace, does not come to make us comfortable. He doesn't confirm us in our comfort. Rather, he comes to form our hearts in truth. And so may this Epiphany give us the courage to change our route, to walk another way.